what we intend to do is whip through it pretty quick. The first part of the agenda is the Kārearea, which is our Progressive Partnership Action Log. That might be briefed down a bit by not having our manager with us, but we'll go through.
Sorry, Councillor Holst, we've got to confirm minutes.
Oh, well, we'll do that, shall we? Okay, so we'll go to confirmation of the minutes first, please. But what I was saying is there's about 9 main items, and we'll run the meeting through to 11 o'clock, and then we'll have a 10-minute break at 11, and then we'll run through probably and finish by 12:30. It's quite a lengthy agenda, a lot of presentations from staff, but the staff have been briefed to make it to the point, and most of them will have slides and presentations, but they'll be short, and I'll speak to those presentations. So and everyone can get a copy of the presentations later after the meeting if you need them. Okay, so we'll move on to 4.1, confirmation of the minutes of the Kārearea Strategic Partnership Standing Committee held on the 16th of June 2021. Someone like to move those as true and accurate account, please?
Was that date one?
Yeah. Do that. Okay, he wishes Mayor. I'll second. Okay, any matters for discussion out of that? Okay, I'll put those, all those in favor, say aye, accept them, put your raise your body, please. Thank you. Okay, 4.2 on page 11 of our agenda, and you might see me turning my head around. I'm just reading off my other screen by other computer, so trying to keep up. So we're looking at page 11 on our agenda. Okay, so someone like to move the minutes of Kārearea Strategic Partnership Hui held on 21st of July 2021. He moves true and accurate account. Okay, moves Deborah Harding. Second up, please. Ken Cooper, Councillor Cooper. Any matters for correction? Any notes for? Okay, I'll put that motion. All raise your hand, please. Okay, carried. Moving on, next one, minutes of 4.3, page 17. Minutes of the Kārearea Strategic Partnership Hui held on 15th of September 2021. Page 17. Someone like to move those true and accurate account, please? Yeah, worship the Mayor. Second up, please. Councillor Cooper. Any matters of concern or correction? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you. It's carried. Against? Vote carried. Okay, so we'll whip down to our Kārearea on 5.1, page 29 of our agenda. And this is the one we said we might have to work our way through it because Ronald has been leading a lot of this, so we'll do our best to cover the situation. So, I'll get to 29. Okay, someone. So, Rob, would like to lead through this, or have you got any comments you'd like to make, please?
Hoki doc. First of all, just obviously the updates are there, but just if there's any updates to the updates, like have we, Tony, you can kick off with the first one about the temporary place down by Hihiawa. Is there any additional updates on that?
Through the chair, prior to going back into lockdown, we were planning to do a site visit with Tihuinga to make sure what the condition of the building was and what was required, and also to get recreational services to clean up the site and the surrounds. So I've got to get back onto that this week.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, so if we were just go down on the left-hand side, we go down for 1, the Hapu working space, and 2 is a co-governance one.
Yeah, I think that's as far as we've got on that. There's going to need to be probably quite a bit of discussion, but we'll try and give that a bit of a push, because I think we need to get through some things reasonably quickly on that, and certainly get some things set up before the new year. So I'll take responsibility for moving that one along.
So just further to that, just everything government's doing at the moment is leading to a co-governance or some kind of arrangement. So we need to move on it. And Ron Marie and I have had quite a talk on this. And in the background, there's a lot of background paper we can fall back onto, but we want to make the co-governance to start with. We need probably some members from each side, our council side and Happy reps, just as a bit of a spearhead to drive this along. Because once we get going, it's about exploring the opportunities we have about co-governance and the legislation that the government's dropping down onto us. So we need to catch up pretty quick. And it's only 66 days to Christmas, so we haven't got much time to the end of the year. Okay, 3, rural connectivity.
Again, I'll take responsibility for chasing up on that one as well.
Yeah.
I am aware that quite a lot of work has been done, led by Northern Regional Council. So what I'll do is I will get get something, have a chat to them and see what's happened in the recent past. But I also see Tony's got his hand up,
Yeah.
so he's probably got a further update.
So through the chair, we're also, as councils, we're involved with the Digital Enablement Group, which is a cross council with the NRC, and there has been a lot of discussion at central government level around improving the technology as well.
Oh, that's good. So we'll just pause for a minute to let Gus away. So we seem to have a bit of trouble linking Deloraine in. So welcome along, Len. Good to see you here. So Nicolene, have you been able to sort Deloraine out? She been able to link in?
She's now present in the meeting.
Oh, good one. Thank you. Okay, so we didn't have a recommendation for this one as this report. But, someone would like to move that we received that report that Rob helped us out on, please. Okay, Councillor Benny, move. Got a second, please? I can't see who wishes the mayor. Okay, I'll put a motion to receive the report. All in favour, raise their hands across their face, please. Okay, thank you. Carried. Okay, we're moving on to 6.1. It's the action log update for October 2021 and page 31 of our agenda. And it's quite lengthy, but we'll go through it as best we can. Okay, I think we'll do it the same way as we did the last one, Rob, please. So it's number 1, and we work down that left-hand side. So we've got our Hui, our Kārearea committee, and we'll just work down the numbers on the left-hand side.
So the first action point will be dealt with when we do the speed limit review for that whole area. And off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly where it is, but I know it's not too far away. I know the council's signing off the southern part of the district, hopefully in the next few days. So I think that's the next cab off the rank, that and Whangarei heads. So that one's just waiting for the speed review. The next one is on the agenda today. So that's part of today's agenda. I think we've probably stalled a bit on the Otangarewa Marae. So I will again, I'll follow up with that and see what progress we had made. But I'll have a crack at that because it's been sitting around for a long time and I need to get onto it. It's something I remember having some dealings with some years ago. Discussions with Kārearea.
I think Councillor Benny could probably help you out there.
Yeah, that one's already been set up, so Councillor Benny's probably in a better position than me to talk about what's happened.
Yeah, so we've actually arranged to have a meeting with Ramari and Jeff from Kārearea last week, but obviously the lockdown put a halt to that. So we're meeting Jeff from Kārearea this afternoon to just go through exactly to explain to him where we're at with council, short term and long term, where the council is, where we're looking at the whole process, which is a little bit different from staff, but we're working together really well. And I'm really pleased that the coordination between staff and councillors. We did have a Zoom meeting with Kārearea and some of their representatives probably a couple of weeks ago now, and it was a really positive, progressive meeting that everybody has given a commitment to work together. So yeah, really good progress on that, and hopefully we can keep the progress going. So this lockdown slowed things down a little bit, but we're into it as of this afternoon. On mute, Phil.
Sorry, I can't see any hands going up or any comments there. So we'll move on. Next one, please, Rob. Number 20.
Bernadette or Shelley are on the line. Could they give an update for that? Well, it looks like Tony's unmuting himself.
No, I was going to comment on the previous item, number 19, but if you're on to 20, that's all good.
No, go. Yeah, no, please comment on 19 if you've got a comment to make, please.
So through the chair, that work is almost complete now. It's in its final draft. It's gone back to council officers for final review. Then it'll be going to our council, and then we're hoping to bring it to Kārearea shortly after that.
Oh, that's good. Thanks very much. Okay, so 20 we haven't. Is the staff member there to answer that, please, Bernadette?
Kia ora. Morena koutou. I've only just been able to get in right now as you've called out my name. So do you mind repeating the question?
We're on page.
Sorry, this is embarrassing.
We're on page 34 of the agenda, and
Okay.
we're working down on the left-hand side, number 21, which is Takada Area Committee, and it's about. Oh, sorry, it's number 20. And it's to do with one of the projects you've been working on, Waterfront Maori project.
Oh, Mātauranga Māori. We're hoping to tie that in with the Te Ao Māori decision-making framework. So we got some resourcing through DIA for the Te Ao Māori decision-making framework, and also some resourcing around a GIS/Mātauranga Māori project. We've met with a couple of hapu representatives on what GIS work is currently happening at the moment. And essentially, to be frank, we've got the resourcing. We're keen to add the support wherever it can best be spent. And so we really need a bit of guidance from our hapu on what projects would benefit the most from this extra support behind them, as opposed to kicking off a new one. We see strong alignment with the sites of significance mahi that the district plan team are doing, and we acknowledge that it's been an aspiration of sorry, is that at my end? Hapu for some time to have some GIS tools that they can use. So we're really keen to take the guidance. Apologies, is that feedback from my end?
I think
I'm just getting some feedback on Deloraine's microphone.
It seems to happen when Delorraine turns off her microphone.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that in a nutshell, really.
Thanks very much. Any questions about that or any discussion? Okay, can't see any hands going up.
Deloraine's got a question, I think, or a comment.
I'd like to, but I'm having problems with Teams. It doesn't like me at all.
Oh, Okay, we'll just note we might come back to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So in terms of the work on the claim stuff, absolutely great, total or that, but I wonder that in conjunction with a hapu space, we can look at resources to be able to do that GIS mapping work in the hapu space. So we have the resources to be able to do that with council rather than it all happening in council space, because obviously that's a piece of work that we are hugely invested in and interested in, but it will require resourcing to have the wide format desktops, all kinds of things like that, plus access to using drones and things like that to add to the information that is currently held on our claims material.
Yes. Okay, so our managers had a good talk. I've discussed this with Marie, and she's onto that. So I think she's working with people to see if they can happen. But I think it's all going to come down to is how quickly we can actually get you in a new premise, so you can actually start getting some really good office procedures in place. So, okay, so Bernadette, would you like to comment, please?
Thank you. Can I request that we have, would it be suitable to have a working group on progressing that particular kaupapa? Because we do need, we really want to put the, we'll do exactly what you're saying, Deloraine, resource a hapu to do the mahi. And we're just not quite sure how to go about doing that, as different shoes will fit different people, like where they're at in their GIS journey or what tools they need. So we'd appreciate some guidance on how best to do that. Yeah, would it be appropriate, or is that something that would best go through Te Huinga?
I think we definitely want to do that, but we have to start at the beginning. We have to start at the beginning of training, assuming that people don't have the skills and want to be involved in that, Bernadette. So we want provisions to be able to, resources to be able to get the training, get the kit and gear that we need to do the work, and do that at an accelerated pace, obviously.
Just Bernadette, from my perspective, as long as you keep in touch with myself, and I can come to any meetings you like, and I think it's what Deloraine has just mentioned there, if you could work with her to make a list out before we get some councillors involved, because it could be quite an extensive list and we might have to trim, we might have to add to it. So, but I think that's a good starting point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Deborah.
Kia ora, mihi nui ki a koe, Bernadette. I'm keen to work in this space, if you like. And I did wonder, was it something similar that Nikki Wakeman was doing? Because she did come and present to Te Huinga, and we were really supportive around this hapu collaboration of getting the mātauranga on board within the GIS projects. If it's something separate, kei te pai, but yeah, I'm really keen to support in that space. Here too.
Okay.
I think Jade's work is being done under Matakohe. That's an ongoing project now. We probably want something that's going to transition into setting up Te Huinga's capability and capacity as well, Deb.
Okay, any further comment on that? Okay, that's good. I think that's a good way forward. So, Bernadette, please keep working on that as quick as you can, please, because I think this is going to be a great help to hapu members. Okay, number 21 on our list, please. The Hecarine Swamp Repo. We've got a staff member who can answer any of those questions. How are we going on that, please?
I think Simon might be best placed, but I'm not sure there's a lot of progress made since then. But Simon, if you're on the line.
Hi, yeah, Simon Weston here. Unfortunately, Simon Charles isn't here. Would be the best person to answer that particular question and give you some details. It's slow moving at this point in time, so I understand. There is some progress, but it is slow moving.
If I could just add to that as well. So I've been part of the delay in that, in getting the letter back to council that has gone with some additional information that we've been able to contribute to that. So it was a letter that is to go to MFE, MPI, MFE. And so that letter is now been completed and sent to Simon Charles to then refer on to MFE to restart the conversation with MFE around potentially what Hapu would need to do to contribute to what some of the solutions we see might begin to establish a new direction for the Repo.
No, that's really good, Lorraine. So that's good. So, further comment? No. So we move on to 23, which is Bernadette. Significant natural areas.
Significant natural areas. I think that might be more Robert Burgoyne.
Okay, well, Robert is Robert available?
Sorry.
No, that's right. Robert available there?
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep. So the significant natural areas project has essentially been put on hold for now. It's been signaled from MFE that there's going to be further national guidance towards the end of the year. We've stayed in touch with MFE just to see if there are any updates along the way around what that will look like. So far, there's no concrete updates, but yeah, essentially draft guidance coming out at the end of the year for further stakeholder consultation is what's been signaled, and we're waiting until that comes out to proceed with any next steps.
Can I maybe just add a little bit to that? And I'm not sure whether you're all aware of this or not, but the mayors and iwi CEs and chairs sent a letter to the minister around the significant natural areas a while back and just asked that they be done in a way that was more sensitive to our needs compared to the way that they'd previously been done. That went a couple of 3 months ago and got a pretty much instant reaction, and it also helped with some of the court stuff that is going on with with the marine equivalent of significant natural areas as well, which is on the go through the regional council. So,
Phil, you must be on mute, Phil. If I could just add to that, it's already been said, I just want it recorded in the minute that Hapu have a very strong, keen interest, obviously, in the SNAs, and that our interest is also founded on He Whakaputanga, Te Tiriti, and the Stage 1 report, which clearly states we did not cede, that our rangatira did not cede sovereignty. So the significant natural areas for many of the hapu are seen as sovereign whenua. So just want to make sure that that is part of the record today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's good. So, okay, we'll move on to the next one. Number 25, which is we asked Hapu for naming of Northern Event Centre Trust. The new trust takes over on the 1st of December this year. So we asked for input there, and hopefully it's not a rush one, but if you get forward your thoughts on that, it'd be great. So anyone got any updates on that, or if anyone has discussed anything like that? Well, the request is still there, so maybe one of our staff members needs to chase that up. Okay, moving on. Just pause here for a while. I see there's a lot of members now coming to my screen. So we've got Kārearea, Delaraine, Mira, Len. We had Deborah Harding. And Jared, are you still connected?
Still here.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And I see Greg Ennis Councillor Ennis has just joined. So we're getting just about the full complement now. So that's really good. Okay, so moving on to the next page is of Agenda 37 is the action log that's been completed, and so we won't need to go through that. That's just for information. So if you can refer back to any of that, unless someone's got a burning question, we can move through that. And that goes right through to page 41. Has anyone got any queries about any of that? So I think it's all been action. So that's okay. Can't see any hands or anything. So move on to 6.2, our strategic work program.
Sorry, Councillor Hulls, we need to move and second the action log.
Okay, someone like to move, we receive that information, please. Councillor Cooper, second to Councillor Benny. All in favour, please raise your hands. All against? Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, so 6.1. Sorry, 6.2, Strategic Work Program Update October 2021. We've got Rob, could you lead that off, please?
So Tony's probably the best person to walk through this, yeah, rather than me.
Okay, Tony, please.
Yeah, through the chair, I've got a slide that I'll share with you, just outlining the
Yes.
general
Yeah.
points, probably the main points that we want to cover off. Not a lot of progress over the last month. It's probably just moving along each of the various work streams, getting close to their completion. If we start at the right-hand side of the slide rather than left, the trade waste bylaw that's going before council tomorrow for adoption or for a hearing date. And there is, I understand, it was presented to Te Huinga, and some of the members will be making submissions on that.
Excuse me, Tony, we can't see your presentation.
I can, Phil.
Okay.
Yep.
Here it is. Can now, thanks.
Okay. Can you see it now still?
Yes, I can see it now. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the second point, Te Ao Māori decision framework, making framework. I might get Bernadette just to comment on this. It ties back in some of the other conversations we're having around co-governance and consultation and everything. So Bernadette, have you got anything you'd like to add to that slide?
Yes, thank you. We had a really good presentation to TTMAC last week, alongside the draft climate adaptation strategy. That went really well. We had some great feedback from them. Our pānui around our distribution material will be going out really soon. And we've made some extra links of hapu to connect with around Taitokiro in terms of sort of our kanohi, ki te kanohi engagement. And our research funding that will work alongside this project but comes out of the climate change regional work that Sarah and I will talk to later, that's been approved. And so that will also help with some of this decision-making framework engagement too. Kia ora.
Thank you. The Waterfront Precinct plan is all but complete. It's in its final draft and is currently with our graphics department. That will be taken to council in November for adoption. And the placemaking programs are going along really, really well. The Tikipunga and Hecarine placemaking plans have been complete. Once again, they'll be going to council in November, and the initial reach has gone out to Waipu and Pārua Bay communities around their placemaking plans for that scheduled work. I guess the housing strategy is probably the most interesting one and the one that's moving along the best, and it ties back into what Councillor Benny was speaking about earlier on with the working with various elements around housing and whāngarei and what that actually looks like from a strategy point of view. Staff have commenced engagement with hapu and other key community groups. We're looking at both combined and separate work streams to make sure that we don't miss any opportunities and we have the right people in the room at the right time. And at the same time that we're doing the housing strategy, we're obviously continuing our work with Kāinga Ora and also with Whai Kāinga to progress their various work streams also. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, is there another slide or that's
just one slide?
Okay, thank you. So open for discussion. Anyone want to make a comment, please? Could you just put us back on the remove the slide, please?
Yep.
Okay, Deborah Harding, could you indicate you want to speak?
Thank you. I just around the placemaking programs, and we might have raised this before, so sorry if you could just remind me, how do the locations get chosen again for the program? Is it per per population or community interest?
I might throw Rob under the bus on this one and get Rob to answer it.
Okay. Robert?
Kia ora, everyone. There's been quite a lot of debate in chambers about that. So essentially, I think there was some experimental ones, a couple of early wins initially put up, and then councillors were asked to prioritise the remaining areas. So I think Tikipunga was put up because of the huge growth in that area, and Raumanga similarly, because there's a need. We'd done quite a bit of work, I think, in Otangarai at that time, but we hadn't done any much in Raumanga. Hecarine, again, it was a lot of it's about getting the geographical, I suppose, split. So that's the so essentially it's a prioritisation process by councillors using their quote best skill and judgment.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion there? Bernadette, please.
Kia ora koutou. Just to support what Rob was saying and address Deb's partai, there was like a methodology looking at things like growth, and I'm just trying to find it in my emails. But there was a methodology behind that that helped sort of weight different criteria. Would that be helpful to see, Deb? I can check with Alicia and then send that through.
Yeah, that would
be checked off with the elected members to help with their prioritisation, and we'll be looking at using a similar methodology, similar enriched methodology for our climate change work. So I can send that through if that's helpful, or check with Alicia if it needs to be updated.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thanks.
Okay, further comment? Can't see any hands moving, so well, being no other comments, there's a motion on page 41, which is to the Kārearea Strategic Partnership Standing Committee notes the report. Someone like to move that, please? Councillor Cooper, seconder, please. Councillor Innes. Okay, Jared Pittman, do you want to comment before we put the motion?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was just trying to second with the.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I'll put this to the vote. All in favour, please raise your hand above the head, please. Across your face. Thank you. Against? Okay, motion's carried. Okay, we'll move on now to Akaara 6.3 on page 51. Okay, so recommendation on this one is that the Kārearea Strategic Partnership Standing Committee receives the report, Akaara Park, Old Boys, Maris Club Rooms and Sports Fields, and reporting officer Sue Hodges. So someone like to move that we receive this report, please? Councillor Cooper again, seconder, please. Can't see anyone moving, guys. Okay, Jared Pittman. Okay, Sue, are you able to talk us through this, please?
Morena, everybody. Yes, this report, it's really just an update on Council's decision making to date and to bring Te Kārearea back into the loop of what's happening. So generally, you're very familiar with the site up there, and Council's made some kind of in principle decisions. One of them is that the sports fields are retained as part of the wider sports field network and to complement the main number 1 field and the event centre. So that means we keep the sports fields up there, even though Old Boys Marist are relocating. One of the long-term proposals is for a marae or something similar to be developed on the site, but you're probably aware there's no funding set aside in the LTP for that. In the short to medium term, Council resolved to call for expressions of interest for a tenant to occupy the building, subject to the building being fit for purpose. And if the building is no longer fit for purpose, it should be demolished. So since writing of the report, I have met on site there with Colin, the club captain from Old Boys Marist, who's still kind of acting as the caretaker of the building. The club would like to stay there till February. That will just finalise a couple of things that they've got going, and then they'll definitely be relocating. I still need to find out whether there's some geotech issues with the site. Those of you who are familiar with it will know that there's an old historic slip between the Old Boys club rooms and the industrial development below it. There's some marker pegs placed there and they had been monitored several years ago. So I'm yet to find out the consultant who was doing that monitoring just to see whether there's any movement in that slip. There's a fenced off patio area with what would be classed as a playground from the 1950s. That needs to be removed. It's absolutely unsafe. So that's where some of the slippage can be seen in a concrete slab there. So once that's gone, and I just confirm that the building is fit for purpose, probably call for expressions of interest. I have been approached by the police. They are a tenant of the building and use it for armed defenders training a couple of times a month. There's some other permanent uses. One's a training facility. So whoever would take on the building when we call for expressions of interest, there's potentially some funding streams that would come from these users. So I'm expecting to call for expressions of interest around February next year, unless I get all the information beforehand. So that's just really to update the committee on timeframes and what council's short, medium and long-term strategy is for the site up there. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sue. That's a very clear presentation there. Okay, open for questions. Arangi, yeah, Arangi.
Are we able to participate in a site visit of the area, of the buildings in the area?
Absolutely. You just want to contact me offline and I can set up a meeting.
Sure, lovely. Thank you.
Okay, any other queries? No. Well, I'll
just a comment from me, Phil.
Yeah.
I just want to say that that playground when we put it in was pretty high tech, and in 1950s, so that's a bit harsh.
Well, some of your body parts are aching a bit like the 1970s, wasn't it? 1950s, wasn't it, Kevin? Okay, moving on. I'll put that motion. All in favour, please say aye. Or please raise your hand across your face. Thank you. Against? Okay, carried. That's really good progress on there. Thank you, Sue. Okay, next one, we're going down to 6.4, procurement policy update. And it's on page 53 of our agenda. Okay, so recommendation is the Kārearea Strategic Partnership Standing Committee notes that the current procurement landscape and issues council is working on going forward. Oops, whatever that. Okay, Eddie, welcome along. Eddie?
Kia ora tātou, thank you for that introduction. So thank you all for your time today to have a bit of a chat with you around the procurement policy and for me to provide you with a little bit of an update. Hopefully you'll be able to see some slides in front of you at this point. Good, thank you. So We have been going through a very lengthy process over the last 12 to 18 months of rewriting the procurement policy. And much of that delay has been down to the rapidly changing landscape of procurement across New Zealand, with some of the government's changes to procurement and the direction that we're wanting to head, and the direction that the government is wanting to head. While there's still significant change on the horizon, we are looking to support initiatives to adopt a more socially sustainable procurement process for our district. Local procurement is definitely a significant priority for us. And Heather Edmeads, who's on the call with us today as well, and is our procurement coordinator, actively works with our staff across the organisation to make purchasing decisions that first and foremost look towards our local businesses and operators in the first instance. Supporting the local economy is really important to us, and it's one of the reasons that we often don't have the lowest price as the highest weighted criteria when we're selecting suppliers for goods or services. It is a decision because ultimately we've got to make the best financial decision for our ratepayers, but it's often not the highest. In terms of our engagement with Māori businesses, we are in the process of building relationships with Amotai and Te Puni Kōkiri. In fact, we recently reached out to TPK to try and encourage Māori business participation in the procurement process that we were running with the Civic Centre. It's something that we're definitely interested in doing more of. Missy Armstrong and I have exchanged a few calls and emails now, and in fact we're due to meet earlier this week, but she's attending the Courageous Conversations about Race training that Council recently went through. So we're definitely going to be catching up soon to work out how we can work more closely together and start building some really strong relationships. In terms of how we define a Māori-owned business, we're taking the lead from MB on this one. MB have said that a Māori-owned business means that it is 50% owned by a Māori, and that's something that you register as when you're registering your business. Given that that's a fairly new initiative put out by MB, I'm going to say that there's a heck of a lot of other businesses out there that are Māori owned that we're not aware of, and that's why connecting with Amotai and TPK will be really important. So as I said earlier, we're really interested in supporting local businesses and the local economy. We know we can do more. The procurement policy has now been drafted and it's set to go before Council next month for adoption. In terms of future engagement with Māori-owned businesses, again, just connecting, having that discussion. We are open to using weighted criteria and procurement to support local businesses. And I'd say that, procurement versus project, we definitely want to engage more with Hapu on some of the projects that we're working on, Civic Centre being one where I feel it's been really successful. Yes, it did get off to a bit of a bumpy start, and so I think we just need some more process around that so that we can ensure we've got that early engagement. And then just educating, so again, connecting with those Māori businesses to educate on council processes around procurement, how to use GETs, etc. Because often if you don't know the way or the path or the process, it's hard to achieve some outcomes. But as I said earlier, we're really open to it, and we're looking forward to that engagement with Te Puni Kōkiri and Amotai. That's all for me, thank you.
There you go, I just lost my sound bar for a while. Okay, so how do you intend to engage with our local Hapu reps on this one? Eddie, like you just mentioned, you want to do it Te Puni Kōkiri, etc., etc. How do you link in with our local Hapu reps?
Really good question. I think in the first stance, we'll reach out to TPK and Amotai because they have got the register of Māori and Pacifica owned businesses. So working with them, I think, would be our best first port of call. Hapu, as I say, when we get to that project stage, engaging with Hapu then so that we can run through whatever project we're working on and engage with Hapu, like the Civic Centre, for example.
Yes, oh, that's really good. Okay, so we'll open that up for discussion. So comments from anyone, please? Okay, Arangi.
I just want to know what Amotai is.
Yeah, really good question. Amotai is a network which has a register of Māori and Pacifica owned businesses.
Okay.
I can provide links to the committee afterwards if they'd like to take a look at their websites.
Yes, please.
Sure.
Okay, any further discussion there?
Yeah, kia ora. Can you hear me, Phil?
Yes, okay, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so while the definition is pretty narrow around Māori business, I wonder that there can also be a view to include hapu as we are on a development journey and how hapu might benefit from a council's procurement policy as well. So not necessarily, there are people within hapu who have Māori businesses, but not all hapu are Māori businesses. But I think, and I've said before, that this is an area that could assist hapu development. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Delorraine. Arangi, going back again, please. Yeah.
Another question, what is GETZ, G-E-T-Z?
That's the government's electronic tendering system. So whenever we release a piece of work for that we're procuring, we advertise it on the system so that it's open for a wide community to register their interest or to respond to a RFP.
Okay, Delorraine, you still got your hand up. Do you want to speak again?
Sorry, no, it is now lowered. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so going back, we had a recommendation at the start of this page, and we accept this report. Someone like to move a recommendation that Kārearea Strategic Partnership Standing Committee notes the current procurement landscape and issues council is working on going forward. Okay, someone like to move that. Okay, Arangi, second it, please. Councillor Innes. All in favour, please raise your hand above the face, please. Okay, thank you. Against? Okay, motion is carried. Okay, thank you, Eddie, and good presentation. Okay, 6.5, 6.5 amendment, long-term plan amendment update, page 55 of our agenda. So who's?
I'm speaking to that one, Simon Weston here.
Yep.
This is the Uruku Landing project.
Go ahead, Simon.
That's great. Next slide, please. What I thought I'd do this morning is to provide the update via the consultation document PowerPoint that we've got. And so this is a PowerPoint that we'll be providing to the community, and you're the first people to see it. So I'm going to run through this because it runs through the project and tells you where we've got to, and I'll give you a little bit of a further update right at the very end. So I hope you find this of interest. Next slide, please. So we do have a video. It's a 60-second video, and if we can get it going.
Kārearea has been offered $60 million from central government to help develop the Uruku Landing Conference and Multi-Event Centre on Riverside Drive, catering for conferences, events and performances.
Is it just me or is the sound cut out? Just me?
No, Jared, I've got a blank
No,
screen.
the sound's cut out.
You should.
Go ahead, Simon.
I've got a slide.
I've got a slide. Can you hear us, Simon?
Yes, I can hear you.
I've got a green
hear
slide
me?
in front of me. A Kārearea Landing Conference Centre and Multi-Event Centre. What have you got?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Sorry about that. Okay, so basically the event centre is receiving $60 million worth of central government funding to help develop that. The centre itself, it'll be for conferences, events and functions, and although it could have some theatre productions, it's pretty much focusing at those conference type events. In terms of scale, the capacity is going to be approximately 1,000 people standing, 750 people seated, and 650 in a banquet type seating arrangement. Now, the overall Ruku Landing development also includes hotels, or hotel rather, apartments and a car park building. Now, those are going to be the responsibility of the private sector, and we're currently working with the private sector to try and make sure that the hotel is going to be constructed adjacent to the conference centre. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of a view from the town basin side as to what it's going to look like. So the top slide is as it is today. The bottom picture there includes the apartment building. Now, the apartment building will have some car parking within it. There is a hotel, and both of those elements are being built by the private sector. And then there's the conference and events centre adjacent to it. Next slide, please. So just to paint a little bit of background, the Whangarei District Council was going to put $23 million into this particular project to cover off a number of kind of infrastructure elements. However, the government required Whangarei District Council and or the Regional Council to take on board any additional costs, in effect to underwrite the proposal. So council decided to take on board the ownership of the conference and event centre itself, and to buy the land and to build it, and that was going to go into the LTP document. So we consulted on that particular proposal during the consultation stage of the LTP. The proposal gained some support within the LTP. However, one of the requirements of the project was that the regional council needed to contribute $14 million into it. Unfortunately, the regional council reduced that figure from 14 down to 6 million. And as a result of that, it didn't make it into the final LTP document. So it's currently not within council's LTP, hence the amendment that we're going through. Since then, council put in some additional funding to complete the cost estimate for the project. And basically today's project is where we are at. Next slide, please. So we've had Becker's undertake a cost estimate for the project to have a look at it in reasonable detail, and they came up with a figure that we worked with the developer over as well of $123 million. Now that $123 million is for the council's component of this, and the next slide will have that. However, that's a significant increase above the 23 million that council consulted on during the early stages of the LTP. And so council's investment today would be $57 million to be able to undertake that project. And none of that funding is within the current LTP. Now, the government, through Crown Infrastructure Partners, agreed to keep that $60 million alive through to the 30th of November 2021. And CIP are looking for council to confirm whether it wants to continue with the project or not. And we have to tell them that prior to that date. Next slide, please. So the components that council will be looking after are here and explained very briefly on the right-hand side of this particular slide. These figures will be used for consultation. They are taken as at the time we had the previous cost estimate. And so that was a comprehensive Becker report that came up with $123 million. However, we are progressing the project further. So at this point in time, when we had these figures, the project is pretty much at concept stage. Now, we are taking that project from concept stage through to preliminary design. So we're hoping to have better figures than these by the end of the council's deliberation period. So if we have a quick look, we've got the event centre itself, about $80 million. We've got an upgrade at Riverside Drive, the Punga Grove intersection, $1.5 million. There's the wastewater upgrade, 800,000. There's the boardwalk, seawall, plaza area, $8.3 million. There's an Uruku ferry terminal. Now, we don't believe that will go ahead. So we think that component will be deleted from the project, and that saves $2.6 million. There is a bridge that goes across the river there from the town basin side, and that's to help provide linkage with the town basin and the city and additional parking. Now, at the time, there was very little information on this when we put the 20 million together. Now, we're hoping that will come down significantly, but we're currently working on it. And then we've got the land cost of $10 million, and that's where we get our $123 million for the council component in this. Next slide, please. So to be able to afford that, council will have to increase the rates. Now, next year, year 2 of the LTP, it was envisaged that there would be a 4.5% increase in rates. Adding Uruku to this, should it cost $123 million, will increase that by 6% to a total of 10.5% rates increase for next year. And then the following years will be 4.5% as per the LTP. One thing I will point out at this stage is that the LGCI, Local Government Cost Index, we've put in the LTP as being 2.5%. Now, we've probably all recently read about the increase in inflation. That figure may need to increase, and that figure may be a discussion point within council for next year's rates. Now, if the project comes in less than $123 million, then the rates won't have to go up as much as that 6%. However, if the project costs more, and council will be the only organisation it looks that will be picking up any additional cost, then of course that would have to increase. Next slide, please. This just shows you the increase in debt as a result of taking on the Uruku project. So the black line there is the LTP net debt as proposed, and the red line, that increase there is the millions of dollars on the left-hand side there increase accordingly. Next slide, please. So things to think about, and this is when we do the public meetings, this is what we'll be asking people to think about. It's a $60 million funding that the government is providing. Now, this is a one-off, and it's highly unlikely that this would ever be transferred to anything else should this project not go ahead. You need to think about the economic, cultural, social benefits and the additional visitors that may come to Whangarei as a result of this project. It will be a destination facility. It's on the loop. If the bridge is put in, then that adds an additional loop, if you like, within that walkway and interest and linkage to the town base and Poe Island. It'll be a large modern centre. We'll be able to run all sorts of different events from that centre. And we're hoping that it will attract a 4-star hotel adjacent to it, as I've mentioned previously. There was also investment in infrastructure, including the bridge and also Punga Grove and wastewater improvements as a result of the project. Next slide, please. Things to think about, I guess these are the risks. Well, at the moment, it's up to 57 million. We're doing value engineering on the project at the moment to try and reduce that 57 million investment by council. It's going reasonably well, but we find as many problems as the ones we resolve. But I do think it's heading in the right direction at this point in time. Council will have to underwrite any losses. So building in today's environment is a bit of a challenge with COVID, with high inflation, and just trying to bring equipment into the country is unfortunately a bit of a nightmare. So costs may fluctuate somewhat, and council will be picking up the tab should they increase. Council will be taking on additional debt, and that could reduce council's credit rating. The location is some distance from CBD, and this has been a point of wide discussion and the reason why the bridge was introduced into the project by the private developer. There's the potential to complete and complement existing or future facilities. The hotel is planned, but at this point it isn't guaranteed. We're trying to get a guarantee that a 4-star hotel will be built. But it at this point is not guaranteed. And also there is limited parking. There is no dedicated parking as part of the facility. Next slide, please. So the Have Your Say event, I guess option one will be to spend $57 million and to get on with the project and accept the increase in debt and also the increase in rates. And we would look after the property and manage the property moving forward. And that would result in an increase next year of 6% based on the figures that we've currently got. Option two would be that council doesn't proceed any further with this project and basically has no more involvement. Next slide, please. So next steps, submissions close on the 18th of November. Deliberations will be on the 26th of November. And very promptly after those deliberations, we need to go back to the government and inform government if indeed we're going to we propose to continue with this project. And there's the 21st of December that will be the actual adoption of the LTP amendment, including this project and all the associated changes to the LTP. Next slide, please. So basically, that's the presentation that will be taken out to the community. You're first people to have a look at that. In the background, we are working hard to try and reduce the cost of the project and to also take the project on to the next stage of development, which is preliminary design. If council decides to progress this project, then we'll be taking the project through to full design. And there is another fish hook with Crown Infrastructure Partners and the government in that they want us to start piling for the building before 30 September next year. So we will have to split the contract for the build of this facility to be able to get the piling sorted earlier and to get that piling in to meet CIP requirements, and then to build the rest of the project as a separate contract. So we're working on that, and we're hoping to provide council with an update in the next couple of weeks or so as to how all of that is going. Questions?
Okay, thank you, Simon. Full presentation there. So Aotearangi, please.
Thank you, Simon. That is an excellent presentation. We discussed this at Te Huinga recently, and the issues about traffic in that area, parking, and obviously the planning changes required, that it's a culturally and geosensitive area, and that it may compete with Hihiawa development. Those were the main issues that we discussed at Te Huinga from my notes. Now I have a question. Where's my question? Would council sustain any losses if the project did not go ahead?
I concur firstly that all those items that you raised, they're all concerns of ours too, and we're working through all of those. Will council have any costs should the project not go ahead? Well, council agreed to put $1 million into this phase of the project. So did CIP. So we're busy spending up to $2 million to take the project up to this next stage in development. So I guess if the project doesn't go ahead, then there'll be some sunk costs, probably in the order of $1 million, 1.1 million, something like that, overall, should the project not go ahead.
Okay, Deborah Hardy.
Kia ora, thanks very much. I just wondered if the location, if the whole project didn't proceed, is there a plan B around looking at it at an alternative location, or is it that location, that one there chosen, or there's nothing?
That's a great question. We explored that particular issue with CIP, and basically it's this location or nothing. If indeed this project doesn't go ahead, of course there's the Forum North site and the development of a theatre facility at Forum North that could go ahead, and could indeed go ahead should council wish to see that happen, even if this facility does go ahead. But as far as the $60 million is concerned, no, this is the site.
Okay, happy with that, Deborah? Okay, open up for discussion, further discussion. Jared. Yeah. Jared?
Yeah. Oh, kia ora, Simon. Thank you for the presentation. Noting that the main use of the facility would be for conference purposes, I'm just wondering around the numbers in the business case, considering the climate with COVID lockdowns and level changes, and if that impact's been considered there.
There would be an impact. I guess it will be an impact for a period of time, and then it may well go back to what was envisaged after a few years. it's hard to pick at this point in time exactly what will happen. It's an issue that's kind of swimming around our minds as well, and it's kind of anybody's guess as to how conferences and so forth kind of react post-COVID.
Thank you.
Okay, Glenn Bristow.
Yeah, my question, Simon, is probably around, say $2 million that the council is going to put up. What is the ratepayers input into this in regard to the 4% increase in rates? What would that amount come to? And probably because of the SNA, there's no definite solution to that in regard to the SNA. So if people are the rates are raised to 4%, and they, for the rates of their land, and some of that land will be taken over by government in regard to the SNA, I think that's an unfair cost to the ratepayers in regard to that.
Thank you for your question or for your point. Within the consultation document, we do have a number of examples, and so you can have a look at those examples, and they'll give you kind of per property how much that would actually be. The next year, the proposed increase in the LTP is 4.5%. If we introduce this project, it's an additional 6%, so that's a total of 10.5% for next year. Should that project go forward. But yeah, please refer to the actual examples that we have in the consultation document. We'll make that available to you so that you can actually have a look and see what that may mean. The other point you raised, the $2 million, 1 million of that is councils, 1 million of that is the government's CIPs. So the money we're spending at the moment, only half of it is councils, the other half is governments, and government are accepting that if the project doesn't go ahead, we don't have to give that back to them. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Can't.
Yeah, I've got my hand up, Phil.
Okay, go ahead, please, Kev.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, thanks, Simon. So just from a council law's point of view, I think one of the and I'll just touch on a couple of the subjects that have been raised. I'm on the working party with Simon and some other councillors and some of the staff. So just a few comments on some of the presentation. So I think the key to it is up to 6% rates increase. And I think there's a very real option that it could be significantly less than that, by a couple of reasons. One is what Simon's already gone through with the value engineering. So the building has been scoped slightly down from the original concept, and there will hopefully be savings to be made on that. And there is a work in progress to save money there. And I know that that could go either way, but there is real work going on with that. The other option is, in my mind, is the removal of the possibility of the removal of the bridge over it's 111 meters, I think, the bridge from Oruku to the Heiau Peninsula. I think that is a real possibility that be removed for a variety of reasons. One is that I don't think that the point of it is is called connectivity to the car parking, and that I don't think that's a real option, that people will park on the other side and walk across a bridge to a hotel. And we've already got a world-class walking loop in existence, and it's only a couple of 100 meters to the CBD. So I don't see that bridge as being, at this point of time, it may not be affordable for the ratepayer. So from that $57 million total, take off the ferry terminal and the bridge, you reduce the cost by $22.6 million just like that. So there's a significant saving to the ratepayer. So I think the key is up to 6% if everything goes ahead. If we remove that, then it's considerably less than that. So there's just a point of view to be able to look at. There is the car parking thing is something that has been brought up a lot. and I understand it. And I think rather than see it as a problem, I see it as a real opportunity, in that this city has got to take the car parking issue seriously. We have just built the Huntavasa Art Centre there without any car parking. We've in fact taken car parking out to put a park beside it, and I'm supportive of that. So I think we need to look at the whole car parking strategy. The bus system doesn't work. We need to look at electrified, so working with the government to work on electrified buses, shuttles that take away the car parking. So the idea of building a car parking building on this site specifically for once a week cars to park in, the rest of the time it would pretty much be unused, doesn't make a lot of sense. So the issue of building car parking buildings just for the sake of it, so people can park there a couple of hours a week, doesn't make a lot of sense. We need to look at the whole strategy around moving people around, our residents transitioning into town. How are we going to do that better? I think it's a real opportunity to address the whole system, to work with the government and get ahead. The government has been really bullish about this. The Finance Minister, Grant Robertson, was up here, really is encouraging the council to go ahead with this. Same with our local MP, Emily Henderson, really pushing this project. It's a great opportunity for us to say to government, we want to work with you. We want to try and reduce the cost to our ratepayers as much as we can. And I believe there's lots of ways to do that. So there's a whole heap of stuff to go through, but all in all, it's a really positive progress.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Further comment? Oops, who is that? I can't see any hands going up, so any further comments? Okay, Arangi.
Thank you for that, Councillor Benny. That was good clarification. I've just got concerns around the cultural constraints that we discussed at Te Huinga recently. So I guess that will come up in submissions, and we look forward to speaking about it again. But I think that needs to be a strategic, that's a strategic issue for us as Māori, as tangata whenua.
Okay, further comments? Okay, we'll go back to the top of the page, and page 55 is recommendation that the Kārearea Strategic Partnership Standing Committee receives the updated report of the long-term plan amendment and a Ruku Landing Conference and Event Centre project. Someone like to move that, please?
I will. Mira.
Yeah, Mira. Second up, please. Yes, Len Bristow. It's good. So just before I put it, thank you very much, Simon. That was a pretty clear presentation, well backed up with the slides. So pity about the video, because the video is actually quite nice. So, okay, I'll put the motion. All those raise your hands above their face, please, so you can see that. Okay, against. Okay, it's carried. Okay. So moving on to the next one, we've got our Three Waters Reform Update, 6.6 on page 57, and we've got Simon Weston doing a presentation on this one as well. Okay, welcome, Simon.
Kia, thank you again. Next slide, please. So I've done a number of presentations to you in regards to what's happening with the water reform. And unfortunately, it's been quite a gap between the last time we spoke and today. So I've tried to kind of capture the key components for you. So basically, the government has announced a proposal for 4 new water entities. It has provided council packages of funding, and I'll go through those. There's been a heads of agreement between the Crown and partnering commitment to support the Three Waters with local government, and WICS, the Water Industry Commission of Scotland, have provided all sorts of additional pieces of information with regards to their modelling. And the Whangarei District Council has provisionally opted out of the reform. and kind of reconfirm that. Next slide, please. Significant documents that have been provided. There's been 3 cabinet papers. There was paper 1 that was the new system for the 3 waters service delivery. Another one on the designing of the new delivery entities, and the third one protecting and promoting Iriya Māori rights and interests with the 3 waters service delivery model. And those cabinet papers and the associated minutes are available on the DIA website, and they're well worth a read if you have time. Next slide, please. So basically, these are the boundaries for the new water entities. As it stands at the moment, the entity A will be Northland and Auckland, and it doesn't look like any of the Hauraki Gulf councils will be associated with that. It will just be Northland and Auckland. Next slide, please. This is a slide that was provided by DIA. It's part of the WICS modelling, and they're suggesting that at in the year 2051, if you join entity A, the cost per property will be $800 per property, and if the reform doesn't go ahead or you're not part of the reform, it'll be a lot more expensive, 2,170. Now, these figures have been disputed by various parties, and there's an interesting array of opinion in regards to the favouritism shown to the entities by the WICS modelling, but I won't go into that because that's probably a significant presentation in itself. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that I've included in your pack for you to have a look at, but it just shows some of the modelling that WICS have provided for these entities, and I'll just leave it at that and let you kind of peruse this. If you've been keeping up to date with what's been in the press, then you'll see that a number of councils have kind of challenged some of this work. Next slide, please. So the structure of the new entity, and they're reasonably complicated. And basically what they've suggested is that the ownership is with local authorities, and the kind of control is split almost 50-50, and there's Mana Whenua and the local authorities choose the regional representative group, and it is that group that then chooses the independent selection panel, and the independent selection panel then appoints and monitors and looks after the board, and the board controls the actual entity itself. I guess interesting components of this is that they say that the local authorities will still continue to own the assets, but in saying that, there's no kind of shareholding, no financial recognition of ownership either. And in terms of kind of the regional representative group, that is made up of up to 12 people, and the number of people from each council or from Mana Whenua will be proportional on the size of that local authority or Mana Whenua group. So it's interesting as to how that will be developed should that continue to be the model. It's probably easier for entity A, although you've got the scale of Auckland that will kind of diminish the number of Northland people that will be involved in that potentially. But if you think about some of the other entities down south where you've got like 20 different councils, as to they put that regional representative group together will be quite interesting and quite challenging, I'd say. Next slide, please. So the water reform has provided or suggesting that they'll provide funding available to local government, and there's a total of $2.5 billion put aside plus the 296 million that's already within the government's budget. And that was announced in 2021 this year. So the components of that, there's $2 billion that will be a better off component for local government, 0.5 billion for no worse off component, and the 296 I've already mentioned. And DIA are working with local government New Zealand in that regard. Next slide, please. So in terms of the better off component, the $2 billion, that will be funded by 1 billion from the Crown, the government, and 1 billion from the new water entities. So that 1 billion will be debt placed at the feet of the new water entities before they've started operating. In terms of the apportionment of that, they've based the apportionment on 75% population and also the deprivation index and land area in those percentages on the slide. The funding can be used towards well-being associated with water reform objectives, climate change and resilience, housing and local placemaking. So they provided quite a wide gambit in terms of what you could do with that funding, and I'll get to what our funding looks like in a second. The projects would need to be consistent with government priorities. And in terms of timeframes, it was kind of indicated that $500 million would become available on 1st of July 2022 and the rest in 1st of July 2024. And that's the date that the new water entities are supposed to be taking over from local government. Next slide, please. So the no worse off component that I mentioned previously, that's $500 million. That will be provided by the new water services entities. So there's 250 million for stranded overheads associated with local government, 150 million based on per capita sliding scale, and that does exclude Auckland, Christchurch and Wellington because they've got their own bucket of up to $50 million. And there's also an additional $50 million for those councils that can demonstrate greater stranded cost associated with this reform. There'll be $250 million to address adverse impacts on the financial sustainability of territorial authorities, that's local government, and we'll see more information on that later. Next slide, please. So the 296 million that I mentioned previously, that's to help councils with reasonable costs associated with the transfer of assets and the liabilities and revenue associated with the waters to the new water entities. So it's kind of staff time, legal and accounting and any audit costs that are associated with that. Now, also an interesting element of this, and this kind of impacts on our council, is that local authorities that have got cash reserves associated with water infrastructure have been informed that they need to spend that by the 1st of July 2024. All those reserves will be transferred to the new entities. We are one of the few councils in New Zealand that has an impact on, because we are or we do have reserves in this particular space, tens of millions of dollars of reserves in this particular space for the waters. And if we don't spend that, we will need to transfer that to the new entities. Next slide, please. So what's the outcome for our particular council? Well, from the modelling that DIA has provided, there's 38 million for the better off package, 5 million for stranded overheads and 90 million for financial sustainability. And the reasonable costs will be whatever they are, and they're to be announced. It looks like a reasonable amount of money, $133 million, but it is a small percentage compared to the actual value of the assets themselves. Next slide, please. So the government has given local government 8 weeks to review the information and to ask questions. That period has ended. Local government has provided feedback. This council has provided feedback in regards to the reform. It has supported some elements of the reform, and it has said that it doesn't agree with the model as proposed for the new entities, and it has confirmed its decision to provisionally opt out. There's quite a few councils around New Zealand that are relatively unhappy, and I'd say there's only probably a handful that are pleased with where things are at this point in time. However, given that, we are currently waiting to see what the government's next step is in this particular reform. Next slide, please. That's not one of our water main breaks, it's just a beautiful photo. So I'm open to questions.
Okay, open for questions. So thank you, Simon. A lot of information there. A lot of people have seen a lot of that information before, but questions. Jared Pittman, please.
Kia ora, thanks again, Simon, for another good presentation. Hey, I'm just probably through the chair, taking Whangarei District Council's opt-out stance in this. Or can I put it this way? With the opt-in option, there is ability for Māori to have influence levels, albeit a little bit watered down in some places. But considering council's opt-out stance, where does council foresee Papu having influence in a locally controlled water scheme?
Simon, can you answer that?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And it's an interesting one. As it stands with the current model, the water entity itself would seem to be somewhat at arm's length from local government and also mana whenua, through the tiers that you have to go through to be able to appoint the board and monitor the board. So it seems great at first, but I'm not entirely convinced it's I'm not sure how much control you would have, because it is at arm's length. And it's also the case that if you have a look at the scale of Auckland, then the people on that kind of representative group could pretty much be, or will mostly be, from Auckland, it would appear, and potentially not so much from Northland. So that kind of diminishes things as well. Although Whangarei District Council has provisionally opted out, I guess the expectation within the water industry is that central government will probably mandate the water reform. And so we're waiting to see whether that will be the case. I think what we've signalled is that the way it's set up currently is we think that there's probably a better structure that would provide greater involvement by Northland than what the structure being proposed will do. So we're asking that central government works with local government to explore alternatives that will provide what we think may well be a better outcome. And a more inclusive and involving outcome.
Okay, Delorraine, please.
Sorry, sorry, go back to Jared. You just pick up with Jared. A couple of people comment they can't hear you. Yeah, sorry everybody. I'm sitting next to a busy road on Cameron Street. Yeah, thanks again, Simon. I think the point on my question is, within the document and the information that you've shown, we can see clearly, although we don't know for sure because it hasn't been instigated anywhere, where Māori have influence in the central government take on this. What we don't have an understanding of, and I hear you saying that Northland will have more influence. What I'm asking is, where is the opportunity for Hapu to have influence in a local entity should one emerge from this part of the country?
I think it would be great to have your involvement in exploring the alternatives. Probably 18 months ago, I did raise with Kārearea that we were embarking on looking at some options, and we were doing some investment logic mapping associated with the problems in the water space, and looking at the spectrum of options for running waters within Northland. And at that point in time, we asked if you'd be involved in that, and we very much appreciate that at that point in time you didn't support the reforms, and I think that you were hoping that there'd be greater engagement by central government with you, and so because you didn't support the reforms, you didn't want to participate in working through that IMO investment logic mapping stuff. I think if we were given the opportunity to explore that further with the government, then we would very much like to have you at the table actually doing that work with us and looking at those alternatives, so we can see that you'll be involved in that. I hope that answers your question.
One more question, Simon. Is there an opportunity for us to have that conversation with council, between council and Hapu, before central government is involved?
Absolutely, yes.
Right. Thank you.
Just so we don't lose sight of that, can you come back with some dates, Simon, to range out of that? If the commitment is made, we've got to make sure we fulfill those obligations, eh?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got a question from Tami Turangi. Is Tami, you connected, or you want me to read the question?
Kia ora, Bill. Yeah, I think it follows what Jared has raised, and the questions were really around the level of engagement between Whangarei District Council and Auckland Council around Entity A, and have there been any positions established in those discussions on an engagement plan for the area of interest in Entity A? I mean, I think we all got a picture of where DIA was heading through the seminars that they ran. But I think, like Jared has already raised, Bill, the opportunity to re-engage with Whangarei District Council around what the options are at home here. Kia ora.
I look forward to doing that.
Okay, thank you. Aorangi.
Kia ora, everybody. Thank you for that, Simon. We've had quite a bit of engagement from our meeting with Nanaia February last year to I attended the select committee in Wellington about the Three Waters, and also the workshop up at the stadium, Toll Stadium, I can't think what it's called now. And I see here that when you spoke of central government probably mandating this, and then I see the October 2021 Real Estate of Water Services Bill. It looks like that could well be the case. But I think that, for one, I'm really proud of our council for standing up and being the first council voice in the country to stand up against and opt out of this Three Waters reform. Yeah, I think we've got to continue with that stance, because generally Māori will be against this Three Waters reform. Regional control and management is not our thing. We manage ourselves via hapu and whānau, not via regional boundaries that this is. And that whole model from Scotland, we also discussed all of this at Te Huinga recently, and using an overseas model here in Aotearoa just feels like colonisation all over again. Raupatu, I mentioned to Cheryl in the back of the bus on the way to the meeting with Nanaia Mahuta, and I've heard Raupatu used recently by members of Parliament about this Three Waters Reform Bill. Yep, I think we just keep going as we are. I think Whangarei is stepping out with a different stance to the rest of the country, and I think we should continue with that.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comments? Just
Please.
If someone got someone else?
Thank you, Phil. It's Deloraine.
Okay, Deloraine, and then Rob. Phil on.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Simon. I have a couple of questions. The first one is with regard to growing inequity for rural non-reticulated whare and out at the kāinga, and what provisions there will be. What is council thinking of in both options in terms of whether the Three Waters is something that is simply going to be pressed by central government, or the alternative that it's not to the same extent, and that local councils have more control over that program. So what are the provisions for improving the inequities that we currently experience as Māori in rural non-reticulated communities? And my second statement would be around, great to hear the tens of millions of dollars of surplus that needs to be spent by 2024, Simon, and that there might be some thought to assigning some of that to the council's asset in the Hikurangi Repo, perhaps even purchasing and retiring some land out there might be a good start. Things like that, some different options for the Hikurangi Repo. Thank you.
Good comments. Okay, Rob, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, just a couple of things to add. One, we are hearing that the government may have discussed this issue at its cabinet meeting on Monday, and there are some rumours that they will make it mandatory this week. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know, because I suspect the alert levels would have taken up a lot of their time on Monday, so they may not have got to it. But we are expecting a decision from government to be announced reasonably soon. The other point I think that Jared made, which is a legitimate one, around hapu involvement in waters. I think when I first talked to council about this, I said we need to have an alternative, and we need to have greater hapu involvement around waters. And this may be something that we can start talking at in terms of the co-governance project, which is on the go, because I think there's got to be a bit more, I suppose, working together on that. And then Deloraine, just in terms of your points, so in terms of the rural inequities, there is some work going on in that, and there are some water tanks, for example, being provided generally further north. And NRC's got a project involved which they call water poverty for people who basically can't get enough water because the rainfall in the area doesn't give them enough. But the other point I would make about this whole proposal is it specifically exempts household water supplies if you do your own. So you won't be subject to any regulations. But if you're connected to someone else, so if you have, for example, a papakainga thing, then you will be part of it, and presumably that'll be part of the discussions that go on. But there's a lot of unknowns at this stage, and a lot of things being said. Yes, we'll deal with the details of that later, so we don't really know. But that's a sort of a summary of where we've got to since, in the last week to 10 days, really.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any further comments around the room? Only thing from the chair's point of view, I think since we met with Minister Mahuta up at Pai here, we've had a lot of dialogue on this, and it's really, really pleasing that everyone's sticking together on it, and we've got a pretty unified voice, and our mayor's leading it really, really well at the moment, so it's really good. Okay, further comments. So on page, for this one, on page 57 is a recommendation that the Kārearea strategic Partnership Standing Committee receives the updated report on the government's Three Waters reform. I'll move that. We've got a second for it, please. Rangi, any further discussion? Okay, I'll put that motion. All in favour, raise your hands across your face, please. Thank you. Against? Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Just well done. So, okay, moving on. We're on to 6.7 draft Takada climate adaptation strategy. And we've got a new staff member, and Bernadette to lead her off, please. Bernadette, thank you.
Kia ora koutou. It's neat to be able to see you online today. You all know me, and we have our my colleague Sarah Irwin, who is online and will be presenting with me today. Sarah and I lead the majority of our climate adaptation mahi for Whanganui District Council, and we work very closely with our regional colleagues, as well as our hapu and iwi representatives. We have Delarraine online today too, which is awesome because you guys supported her nomination to work with us in the climate change mahi, as did Te Huinga. And so Delarraine will have some insider knowledge too. And throughout, it was quite a long presentation, but we'll have check-in points as we go. So Sarah, would you like to kick us off? Next slide, please, Danielle.
Kia ora koutou. So I'm Sarah Irwin. I'm the Manager of Infrastructure Planning, as Bernadette said, and thank you for letting us talk through this strategy with you. As we noted in the report, we are very aware that you are only just seeing this work, and we're also asking you for comments. So we will welcome requests or further information later if you want to provide that after this meeting as well. The report is focused on a region-wide strategy, so it's working through our mahi within the climate change Te Takada group, which incorporates the Northern Regional Council, as well as the 3 district councils and members from hapu and iwi across the region. And the purpose of today is really to get people's to go through the strategy and then take back to the group any comments and information that you would like to have to change that the strategy that we have in front of you today. The strategy, at the end of the strategy, we'll go through some of the action points. The action plan is probably the key part of where the document's going to go into the future, so we will put a bit of time into that. Next slide, please.
Cool.
I'll hand back to Bernadette.
Thank you. Just a little bit of background about climate change. So climate change from a Western science perspective is explained as sort of long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural through sort of variations in the solar cycle, but since around the 1800s, there's a lot of evidence that it's human activities that have really been the main driver for climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels, such as oil and gas and coal. So with the burning of the fossil fuels, it creates greenhouse gas emissions that act like a blanket that wrap around the Earth, and that traps the sun's heat within our atmosphere and raises temperatures which essentially create changes within the climate. Examples of greenhouse gas emissions that are causing climate change include carbon dioxide and methane, and these come from activities like driving vehicles or heating buildings, clearing forests that release carbon dioxide, landfills, which are a key activity for councils, release methane emissions as well. And through our presentation, you'll hear us refer to a couple of terms being climate change mitigation and adaptation. In the context of climate change, mitigation is essentially like the human intervention to reduce the sources of greenhouse gas emissions or to enhance the sinks of those emissions. So, for example, opting for public transport or active transport over private vehicle use is an example of mitigation, and planting trees or supporting mangrove systems to sequester or draw down carbon is also an example of mitigation. In terms of adaptation, well, we've done enough damage and created enough change in the climate that some changes are now locked in for decades or centuries. So adaptation is really the process of adjustment to those actual or expected changes in the climate and its effects in order to moderate harm or to exploit any beneficial opportunities. Next slide, please. Oh. Cool, thank you. So the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change provides regular assessments on the scientific basis of climate change, its impacts, its future risks, and options for adaptation and mitigation. The latest report from the IPCC is the AR6 report. Some of the common changes relevant to New Zealand that have been observed with high confidence by the UN include that New Zealand land areas have warmed by around 1.1 degrees since a period of between early 1900 to 2020, and that our annual temperatures have emerged above what you'd call sort of natural variability in all of our land regions. The heat extremes have increased and the cold extremes have decreased, and it's sort of projected that those trends will continue. Relative sea level around New Zealand rose at a rate higher than the global average in recent decades, and you guys will probably be very well aware that sandy shorelines have retreated in many locations, and that relative sea level is projected to continue to rise. That will contribute, of course, to increased coastal flooding and shoreline retreat. And we've got a very special shoreline, so this is a big issue for us. The frequency of extreme fire weather days has increased, and our fire season has become longer since 1950 in many of our locations. And we've seen an increase in marine heat waves and ocean acidity, and that's also projected to increase. Cool, next slide, please. You might need to press it again to get the next set of data to pop up in the slide.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you.
So these are the climate predictions from Northland that came out of the AR5 report, and we're aware that these will need to be updated. And NIWA are working on remodelling the data that's come out of the AR6 report across the country and at a regional level, that we can hopefully be looking at getting that information by the middle of next year. But this is what we're working on at the moment. So as Bernadette just ran through, we're looking at some predictions there that are pretty much raising our temperatures by up to 3.7 degrees by 2090. We're looking at some pretty high sea level rises, yeah, up there from 1.7 meters to by 2120. And another big part of that is the saltwater intrusion into our aquifers, especially into our coastal aquifers. With rainfall, we're looking at higher intensity rainfall events in specific areas, and also more frequent dry spells than others. So the patterns of our rainfall are expected to change. They're expecting a 23% less spring and winter rainfall by 2100, which is quite a significant decrease. And it's the severity as well. So the storms become more severe. We're looking at more severe storms, similar to what we probably experienced last year, but on a more regular basis. One of the other risks that we're looking at is in the biosecurity area. So as the climate warms and the rainfall patterns change, new pests potentially can be introduced into our district and region, which have massive implications for the biodiversity of our region. Is there anything you wanted to add to that one, Bernadette?
No, thank you. Next slide, please. Cool. Okay, so why are we doing this climate change work? Well, Whangarei District Council has both the responsibility and the ability to reduce the organisation's greenhouse gas emissions, but to also support the community to reduce theirs through providing things like active transport infrastructure. We have made a declaration of a climate emergency, and we're also a signatory to the Local Government New Zealand Climate Declaration. We have existing legislative requirements around hazard management, and we've got existing and forthcoming legislative requirements around including climate change consideration in the drafting of our district plans, resource consents. We need to understand the risks to communities and infrastructure that we provide for the community, and adaptive planning responses too. We've got increasing requirements to disclose the risks that climate change presents to the assets and infrastructure that council owns, and this will impact the ability for local government to borrow money. We also need to understand and plan for the costs related to greenhouse gas emissions. We create them through things like our landfill, so we'll have to pay the fees for them. And also we have very strong expectations from our community to act. What you see on the slide there is a group of students and their teacher from Whangaruru Primary School who came to talk to council about the flooding that they were experiencing that limited their ability to go to school, and that's not an uncommon story. So we need to act for our future generations. Next slide, please. Cool. And this is a slide from the World Economic Forum Global Risks Report from 2021. It shows the top 10 risks to economic stability across the globe. In terms of likelihood, we have firstly, number 1, extreme weather. Number 2, the failure to take climate action. Number 3, human environmental damage. Number 4, infectious diseases. Number 5, biodiversity loss. And number 10, livelihood crisis. And these all have a very close relationship to climate change. And in terms of impact, we have number 1, infectious diseases, 2, climate action failure, 4, biodiversity loss, 5, natural resource crisis, number 6, human environmental damage, number 7, livelihood crisis, and 8, being extreme weather. And again, all of these have a close relationship to climate change. So they're recognizing that these issues will create global economic instability. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we're very aware with the strategy that we're working in a period of time where there is a changing legislative environment. So under the existing legislation, the Resource Management Act and Local Government Act, we have to promote our well-being through the provision of coastal environments, resource management and infrastructure, and we have to plan for that within our district plans. But we are also under the mantle of what's coming. So the RMA reform, looking at the Strategic Planning Act, the Natural and Built Environments and Climate Change Adaptation Act, which is the potential there is to be able to better prepare for adapting to climate change. And we're still ready to see how that's going to play out. We also have the Climate Change Response Act, which is looking at the risk, coming up with the risk assessments and our obligations under Te Tiriti, and how we're going to work through the all-of-government approach there. So it is a changing environment, but we felt it was really important to take this strategy at a state now so that we can actually start to work under it rather than waiting for these acts to actually be in place before we make those moves. Next slide, please. So how does this work fit into what's actually happening at council? So on the left, we have what I've just talked through there, the policy and legislative requirements that we are working under, as well as the tools that central government have created. So what's coming out of the National Risk Assessment, the National Adaptation Plan, which has now been pushed out till next year, and the emissions trading schemes. And those documents have all fed into our Te Tai Tokoro climate adaptation strategy, which, as we mentioned before, has had our 4 strategic partners as well as our hapu partners building that strategy. And then that feeds down into how Whangarei District as a whole will respond to climate change, of where we will need to have further more directed hapu direction, and also our community response. So some of the things that will fall out of that will be some adaptation pilots and plans, and they are some of the actions that are within the Whangarei District Climate Action Plan, which you'll see there in the green button. But the key part here is that the climate adaptation strategy has some really high level actions, and then they will be taken down to the next level as to how they will actually fit into Whangarei District's action plan, which we've been doing quite a lot of mahi on over the last 6 to 8 months. So next slide. So we have split this, as this is quite a long workshop, we split this up to basically be able to ask questions as we go. So this is the first time for questions. Delaran, you had your hand up. Do you want to speak?
Kia ora. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Bernadette, for a great presentation. The bit, of course, that hapu are very interested in is the localised community engagement and socialising this out to community. So it's critically important, as we've discussed already, being able to get out into communities. I also note, Sarah, on the last slide that we have a column there of hapu engagement that seems to stop at the governance level, and believe it's critical that hapu continue to be involved in the action planning and implementation. Thank you.
Okay, so where we are now, Bernadette, unfortunately, we've just clocked past 11 o'clock, and understanding orders, we need to take a break. It's mandatory to have a 10-minute break. So we'll have to come back and finish your presentation and field questions after that. To all the staff members that joined this morning on other topics who may want to leave, thanks for your involvement. We're covering a fair amount of topics today and getting some really good input, so thank you for that. And so we'll have a 10-minute break now because we've got to finish this agenda item off, and then we've got one confidential agenda item as well. Okay, thank you. So we'll come back at 11:15. Thank you.